Hello and a very warm welcome to all of you today to this, the second edition of our Feed Forward webzine. Today's episode is hosted by Top Silo Constructions, otherwise known as TSC, and it poses the question, when it comes to storage, can thinking smart beat thinking big? Especially given the current disruption to global supply chain. Before we dive into this topic, a brief reminder of what you're watching and why. We created this unique webzine format as a way for our industry to get together and look forward to the opportunities and challenges we're facing in feed and food production, and hopefully provide some practical steps on how to tackle them, hence Feed Forward. Each episode is live streamed and includes customers, partners and other experts able to give you their own unique viewpoint on the topic in hand. For example, this latest edition features the perspective of the feed mill, the contractor, the consultant and the storage warehouse, as well as our own experts at TSC. Each episode lasts around 20 minutes, plus a live 10-minute Q&A session at the end, where we'll address any questions you send us during the broadcast. After all, we want this to be a two-way conversation. And we'll continue to answer your questions via social media or directly after the broadcast is over. So, without further ado, let's talk storage. Can thinking smart beat thinking big?
Hello and welcome to Feed Forward. My name is Lars Oostveen. Let's talk storage today. When it comes to feed and food processing, everything literally starts and ends with storage. It's a necessary, functional element of any mill. In this episode, we'll be looking at whether storage has perhaps been taken for granted at times. Is there more to storage than meets the eye? You'll see our guests debating topics that include whether smart storage concepts can help mill owners and operators get more from limited space. New ideas on improving storage hygiene, consistency and quality. Strategies for managing long-term revenue versus short-term budgeting. And we'll be looking at how mill owners might balance the need for buffer storage versus process storage in order to mitigate the supply chain risk. I'm joined here in the studio today by Sven Konings. He's commercial manager at Top Silo Constructions, also known as TSC. Welcome, Sven. In your own studio TSC facility.
Nice to be here.
Great. There's a lot in store. So let's get started with the feed mill's perspective. Klaremelk, based in the Netherlands, is an international specialist in young animal nutrition. This family-run company is in the veal business and has calves at around 60 farms, both owned and contracted farms. Recently, Klaremelk decided to start its own dedicated feed production operation. We paid a visit to their brand new mill to get an insight into the storage challenges they face.
My role in the company is I'm responsible for this new location for the compound feed business. So responsible for the incoming materials, responsible for the process and responsible for the outgoing finished product. The veal sector in itself is a bit atypical compared to, let's say, piglets or poultry or ruminants, because there's a high level of integration throughout the whole chain. Many veal feed producers are also having own stables, are having perhaps own slaughterhouses, are having own collection centers. Veal is a premium product and therefore customers expect a premium quality. To reach this premium quality, we need to be able to have control of the raw materials and ingredients that we use for our compound feed. And therefore, the quality control is quite vital and essential to our business.
This is in the three-dimensional design Klaremelk project. Klaremelk wants to produce high-quality veal. That means for TSC we have to deliver dust-free silo pens, because when there is dust around the silo on the floors, it could lead to roast meat.
Klaremelk has chosen to work with square silos. It's space efficient, so that every square inch can be used, can be optimized for our storage. In general, each silo can be used for every raw material, convenience-wise and planning-wise, and helping the operators. For now, we have chosen that specific silos have a specific destination. Of course, we are able to switch, but for now we have made the decision to destinate specific silos to a specific raw material.
A silo column has a dual function. The dual function is that it supports the wall. So the loads of the walls of the silo bins are going through the silo columns, through the steel structure, to the anchors into the ground. Another thing is that our silo column can also support the floors, or in this case, a staircase. You can connect it. It's fortified, so it means inside there is a reinforcement.
We have raw materials intake by truck, or we are also able to have them by ship. The biggest advantage of delivering by ship, that is large quantity at once. The disadvantage of ships is that it's less flexible in terms of planning. Generally spoken, if I order a truckload, I can order it 1-2 days in advance. With a ship, that's not possible. So that's where you are less flexible and you have to make planning in advance. So from 2-3 weeks in advance. In the meantime, you still want to produce.
A good erection team is really important for TSC. I don't want to say they are Swiss watchmakers, but really they are really precise. You need a tolerance as minimized as possible, especially gap. It must be tight, otherwise dust will go through the walls and going into another compartment or outside, and you have the dust on your floor. So the guys on site, in each condition, with weather conditions, they are really precise. And it's really important to have a good connection between our silo walls and the floor. It's completely welded. The connection between the walls and our floors are 100% welded and 100% dust-free.
As we look to our clients, which are of course the farmers, the main priority of the farmers is caring for their animals. Ordering feed and keeping track of the quantity of feed they still have is not on their priority list. So that's why it occasionally happens that there comes a late order, or that the farmer says, "Hey, I'm out of feed. I need to be delivered immediately this day, or perhaps the next day." We have a limited amount of recipes at the moment because we want to optimize and fine-tune our process. In the future, we will expand our spectrum of recipes, and we can look at client-specific requests. At the moment, we are quite flexible with deliveries to come, but when volume will grow over time, we need to be more strict and more rigid with the planning in order to make the most usage of our storage facilities.
Klaremelk had a design of a silo for now, so if they want to expand in the future, we can easily build extra cells on the existing or the now new built silo. It's not a problem. It's a modular system which TSC is producing.
Well, as many other businesses, we are highly impacted by COVID-19 as well. As we look to our end product, which is the veal, it's a premium product. Vast majority of the veal produced is exported to southern European countries. A large part of this veal is consumed in restaurants. The inflow of live animals goes on. So we see every week animals are being born, animals are being fattened, and this process cannot be stopped. And the animals are getting more heavier, stables are not built for it, the animals need more feed, cost price will go up and rewards will be lower. So still at the moment, each animal will cost a severe amount of money, but hopefully we are seeing a light at the end of the tunnel and it will pick up rather soon.
Okay, Sven, what do you think?
Well, what I particularly like about this story is Klaremelk didn't produce feed before. So to do what they did, to build a completely new feed mill, something they haven't had any experiences with, well, it takes a special kind of entrepreneur to do something like this.
Okay, so is this new, would you say?
Well, this integration isn't per se new, but it isn't something we come across very often as well. So.
Okay, and so what are the implications for storage?
I think for Klaremelk in this case, well, they couldn't be aware at the moment they decided to build a feed mill what the future would hold for them, what that would look like. So they have to really think about how to design the feed mill, plan ahead, not only for storage but in general. And for storage, that means planning ahead means thinking about capacity, of course, but also about flexibility. What do you need? I think they did that really well, actually.
Okay, and so Mr. Wassink, he mentioned something about the Swiss precision, everything being dust-proof. What is that all about?
In this case, dust-proof, well, dust is a factor that you don't want in your silo. And you don't want it anyway, but in this case it could mean you have a roast meat in the end, where they really want their white meat. So for us, it's one of the many details that leads to a quality silo, and it is a detail that we can't neglect on any stage of the project. So whether in engineering, production or installation, everything must fit, every detail must be right to guarantee a dust-free silo.
Okay, thanks Sven. And of course, thanks to Mr. Klaremelk and Mr. Wassink. So let's now travel north to Sweden for a different point of view. Mr. Hans Olsen is an experienced engineer from Silokonsult, which designs and delivers machine equipment to customers in cereal, feed, food and seed cleaning across Sweden and Norway. He's also an expert in the planning and designing of storage solutions. Mr. Olsen, you have designed and delivered a lot of storage solutions. What is the issue that you come across most often?
One of the biggest issues when you storage powder materials and so on in a silo, that you need to get the flow out of the silo, and it should just work. So I think it's one of the biggest issues in storage in silos is the outlet interface. It should work smoothly and with no delays and so on. We have solved a lot of silo systems and machinery systems underneath the silos through the years. So we have a big know-how about the machinery, and I think Top Silo has the big know-how how to design the silo.
Although storage is a given for feed and food processors, is the importance of designing the storage system sometimes underestimated?
Yeah, it's very common that the customer take it for granted. They just planning for a silo and they don't really know what to do with the design of the inlets and the outlets of the silos and the machinery on top, and also the machinery in the bottom of the silo. I think our experience there is a big help for them.
What is the relationship between storage volume and costs?
They want big volumes for small money. There is some kind of golden key there, that there's a break point where you can find the best storage volume. If you're building small volumes, the square silos is more expensive, but if you designing and building a complex with larger volumes, it will be cheaper.
What do you advise your customers when comparing round versus square silo solutions?
Yeah, round silos we usually use inside a process building when we had to install it in an already existing building. Then we can build round silos in this process. Square silos, we are mainly, it's when you're building a new complex or a new process. We are mainly building and deliver square silos, because then we get already prepared building. Build these silos with the pillars down, the roof construction. You just put these claddings on, and you had a building that is safe for rain and wind. But when you have these square silos, you can build pretty close together and use the area most efficient. And I think there's a lot of round silos that taken pretty nice areas that you could use for volume, more buffer volume. And you also have this space between, if you see.
How does one decide how much storage volume is required?
Yeah, it's very important to design the storage systems and the silo systems for the future and normally production and so on. So you've got this flow through the system that the customer wants, and it's most economical way to produce their flour or whatever. You must do that planning in the design stage of the project. So it's hard to do something about it when you are already building it or when you start to build it. It's a big effort in the early beginning of the project, that you're planning the design and the volumes and so on for the silo system that you need.
What are the risks when you don't plan the storage process beforehand?
Yeah. The main risk, if you don't do this planning when you are designing the silo and the silo system, is that you got maybe wrong type of silos. You got maybe too small volumes to buffer. You got the wrong layout of the silo systems. You maybe got too small capacity. Maybe you got the new product that you should buffer in the silo, and the silos that you have are not designed for that new product. So I think it's very important to do this planning from early.
Interesting. And how do you approach that?
The normal way to work is that together with the customers, we do sit down and talk about the storage volumes, the materials in the silos. What kind of conveyor lines do you need in and out? And also speak about the future, reminding them that they need to plan for the future a little bit. And then we got this communication with Top Silo, and together with them, we got an offer for the customer. And it happened pretty often that they decide to maybe need more volume, or maybe they need more silos, and then we have to update this offer. If we are in the planning, there is no problem to change.
Building the storage can be complex, especially when it's part of a completely new facility. So, Mr. Olsen, what do you expect from your subcontractors in building the silo?
The biggest issue, I think, is the time schedule. If the subcontractor have problems, they need to tell us so we can plan for that delay or whatever. But some earlier contractors that we had didn't tell us anything, and they just delayed the whole delivery for this silo complex. It was a lot of problems when we had ordered, tower cranes and mobile cranes. Delivery of machinery is already on site and there are no silos. That's very important for us, that the communication with the subcontractors are working and we are telling each other the truth about the time schedule and so on. I must say that Top Silo is top notch when it's about planning and delivery and so on. They know the value of a time schedule that's work.
What were the consequences of Corona in Sweden?
Yeah, we could see in Sweden here in the beginning of this COVID-19 situation that people's storage flour. So the mills did increase their production for a couple of weeks. I don't know the exactly volumes, but it was significant. But now I think everyone have buffered their extra package of flour. But I think that will also affect the industry. I think they will buffer more grains and so on in the future. We can see all over the Europe the transports for grain and materials, raw materials, did get affected from these borders that was closed and so on. So I think a lot of production sites will buffers raw material from local suppliers in their own buffer silos and so on.
So I understand that you work with Mr. Olsen on several projects. Is that right?
Yeah, correct. We worked with Hans and his team on quite some projects already over the past few years.
Okay.
Always been a pleasure. Well, actually, we're about to finish another project with them, expansion of an oat mill facility in Sweden.
Okay. And what are you getting out of this interview?
I think Hans very nicely points out that it looks simple at first sight, but that there's a lot more involved in the end. He mentions that the customer wants big volumes for small money.
Yeah, makes sense.
At first sight, perhaps, yeah. But in the meantime, it really pays off, and I think Hans really nicely makes that point. It pays off to really think further than that. Not building big, but build smart. I think that message comes across very well.
So you pretty much agree with everything he says?
Well, if I make one point, he mentions something about building round silos inside of an existing facility. In a particular situation, round silos can be better. However, there's also we have plenty of experience with building square silos inside of an existing facility as well. So maybe in a particular situation, a round silo is a good choice, but maybe a square silo can be even a better choice at the same time.
Okay, thanks Sven. And also thanks to Mr. Hans Olsen, of course. Now let's talk to Switzerland. Let's talk to Lütolf. Storage is their business, which is why we're delighted that they can join us today for some analysis on the importance of flexible storage capacity. Hello, Mr. Lütolf. Thank you, of course, for joining us today. Herzlichen willkommen. But we have agreed that I will ask the questions in English and you will answer them in German. Now, can you please tell us a little bit about Lütolf AG?
Wir sind ein Familienbetrieb, das in der dritten Generation geführt wird von mir und meinem Bruder. Die Firma wurde ursprünglich als Getreidesammelstelle gegründet in den 60er Jahren von meinem Urgroßvater. Später hat mein Vater und sein Bruder Ernst das Geschäft übernommen, haben es ausgebaut und zu einem Logistikcenter für Getreide weiterentwickelt.
And with each new generation, your company grew. Isn't that right?
Das ist richtig. Wir haben eigentlich in Generationsschritten unsere Lager ausgebaut. Ursprünglich hatten wir einen Betonsilo. Da war vor allem oder ist vor allem Zucker eingelagert plus verschiedenes Getreide mit etwa 25.000 Tonnen. Wir haben dazu gekauft in den 90er Jahren, ein Silo brauchen für Futtermittel, Futtergetreide, und jetzt neu seit 2020 haben wir eine Konstruktion aus Stahl von TSC, die wir vor allem brauchen werden für schwierige Produkte, bei denen die Auslaufmethoden sehr, sehr wichtig sind.
Could you please describe the setup of that new silo block?
Ich beschreibe Ihnen sehr gerne, wie der neue Silo bei uns daherkommt. Also wir haben insgesamt den Silo mit 31 großen Lagerzellen eingerüstet, von 400 bis 440 Kubik. Da haben wir 10 kleinere Zellen, die können wir vor allem gebrauchen für kleinere Partien, aber auch für Partien, die wir in Big Bags absacken müssen oder auf Paletten stellen müssen. Und wir haben noch 8 Verladezellen, wo wir die ganz unterschiedlichen Produkte optimal auf die LKWs bringen können und bieten so den Kunden die Möglichkeit, rund um die Uhr bei uns zu laden.
You told us the new silo block enables you to increase the flexibility of your operations. Why did you want to increase the flexibility?
Die Flexibilität für unser Geschäft ist extrem wichtig, weil wir haben verschiedene Kundenbedürfnisse. Wir haben sehr viele Wünsche, die sich in unterschiedlichen Dimensionen bewegen, was die Mengen anbelangt. Und daher ist es wichtig, dass man für jeden Kunden, ob klein oder groß, das richtige Angebot bereitstellen kann.
Can you tell us why you selected TSC to build the new silo block?
TSC war für uns auch bei den Gesprächen ein sehr angenehmer Partner, weil man merkte, dass das Know-how gut rübergebracht wurde, was solche Silobauten anbelangt. Wir fühlten uns von der ersten Sekunde gut aufgehoben, wir fühlten uns gut beraten. Wir merkten, dass die Erfahrung vorhanden ist mit den Referenzprojekten, die TSC schon durchgeführt hat. Und schlussendlich war es eine Kombination von Erfahrung, Beratung, auch Preis natürlich, das uns zu dieser Zusammenarbeit geführt hat.
What are the consequences of the Corona crisis for your business?
Über die Situation, die wir hatten mit der ganzen Corona 2020-Geschichte, als Verarbeiter von Rohstoffen, die für den Lebensmittelbereich oder auch für den Futtermittelbereich von großer Bedeutung sind, und auch der Tatsache, dass wir für die Schweiz Pflichtlager bereitstellen, hat uns diese Situation sehr bedingt betroffen. Also das heißt, wir konnten in normaler Weise weiterarbeiten. Wir mussten gewisse Einschränkungen wahrnehmen, aber es hat uns nicht im Tagesgeschäft gestört. Das heißt, wir hatten normale Abrufe, wir hatten normale Mengenbewegungen. Für uns war das Ganze zum Glück eher auf der guten Seite und wir konnten durch diese Zeit schadlos durchgehen.
As a member of the third generation, how do you look to the future of your company?
Ich denke, für uns ist das in der dritten Generation ein sehr, sehr großes Projekt, das wir realisieren durften, zusammen mit der zweiten Generation, also zusammen mit meinem Onkel Ernst Lütolf, mit meinem Vater und mit meinem Bruder und der ganzen Familie natürlich. Wir denken, dass wir als Silo Lütolf unsere Bekanntheit dadurch in der Schweiz, aber auch im näheren Ausland steigern können. Wir glauben auch, dass wir ein sehr guter Partner sind, wenn es um Anfragen im Logistikbereich von Getreide und verwandten Produkten geht. Und ich bin mir sicher, dass wir mit diesem Bau einen wichtigen Schritt gemacht haben in die Zukunft, dass unsere Firma, wir hatten vor 2 Jahren 55 Jahre Jubiläum, dass unsere Firma weitere mindestens 55 Jahre bestehen bleibt.
I heard TSC build a silo block for Lütolf. So how was that?
Yeah, correct. It's really a massive silo block for us. From the top of my head, I believe over 15,000 cubic meters in the total silo block, which with the biggest bins being 400 cubic meters, more or less. Yeah.
So what were your challenges then with realizing that project?
Well, for example, in this project, it's built in Switzerland. Switzerland has its own building regulations. We also have to take into account the seismic activity in Switzerland. So for us, it means we have to apply the Swiss codes on their earthquake hazards. So we thoroughly have to calculate every detail of the silo, because what happens when 15,000 cubic meters of product starts getting moving because there's an earthquake. So yeah, it's a lot of know-how we have to put into such a silo block.
Very tough, yes. So Mr. Lütolf mentioned product flow, difficult flowing products. How important is that?
Well, yeah, Lütolf, of course, in the end, depends on their silos for their business. And the first requirement of every silo is, I think, that it empties properly. So I was really happy to hear that they put their difficult flowing products in our smooth wall silos, ensuring that these silos are actually empty very well. So yeah, it's key, and I'm happy to hear they use our silo for their most difficult products.
Okay, thanks Sven, and also thanks to Mr. Lütolf, of course. So that brings us to the Q&A, where we will answer all of your questions. And for that, Dennis Tijding from Ottovanger Milling Engineers will join us. So, Dennis, welcome. Here we are, and welcome at the TSC facility studio here in Aalten in the Netherlands. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do for Ottovanger.
Thank you. I'm Dennis Tijding. I'm area sales manager for Ottovanger Milling Engineers for the Russian market.
Russian.
Exactly. And together with my local sales team, we advise our customers with regard to single machinery, but mainly with complete turnkey feed mill installations. And in this case, we often consult our sister company, TSC, for advice with regard to the dosing bins and the finished product bins.
Okay. Now, to all of you that are still watching, of course, the show, please keep sending in those questions by using the comment box below in the live feed of Vimeo. And we go to those viewers' questions in a minute, but I just want to ask both of you guys. So gents, we have heard many different views from many different perspectives. So first of all, Dennis, what is your, let's say, big takeaway on what you've seen so far?
For me, it's very interesting to see that, which is also in reality the case, that no company is the same. They all have their own challenges and also their own solutions to overcome these challenges. But I notice one similarity, and that's actually the closer you get to the core production, the more important flexibility becomes, reliability. And in these situations you see quite often that the square bins prevail, as they are very reliable and also easy to integrate in the existing steel structures or in the greenfield steel structures.
Right. And Sven, we've heard you already talk a lot today about things in general, but what is so far your biggest takeaway? What you would take out of this, what you've seen and heard so far?
Well, first of all, I can completely relate and agree with what Dennis has to say. And for me, the episode nicely points out that there are indeed a lot of factors involved, and that a certain case requires a certain approach, so to say. And no case is the same, so no approach is the same. And what in the end prevails is a matter of planning, thinking ahead. So right. For me, I think that was really one of the biggest takeaways in this episode.
Right, well, that takes us to our first question, because we have a question here from Denmark, and it says, what is the maximum capacity of square silos? Dennis, would you take this?
As I understood, it's around 1,000 square meters.
But you're not sure.
I'm not sure, so I hope Sven will confirm that.
Sven, can you confirm this?
We're talking cubic meters, of course.
Oh, yes, exactly.
Okay, here we go.
No,
This is what happens when you go live.
It's also dependable. Depends on the situation. But for a feed mill, I would say what we in generally see. Lütolf has very big bins already, 400 cubic meters. If
400. That was 400.
Yeah, if you want them uninterrupted, so without any internal bracings or strengthening, that's about it.
About 1,000.
Per bin, of
1,000.
course. Yeah, no, sorry, 400
400
from yeah. We can go bigger. It has some implications, of course, but
so
that's,
far
per bin we're talking.
400.
Yeah.
Great. Next question, by the way. This is, do you expect that a major crisis like COVID-19 will impact the way the industry will deal with storage? So do you expect that, or do you already see that happening, this impact on the industry of COVID?
Yes,
Dennis?
I think for sure.
Yeah? Like what?
The current situation, I think, is for some companies really an eye-opener.
Mm-hmm.
As they always took delivery of raw materials as granted. And that's not the case.
Because of the borders being closed?
Borders being closed it means you don't get the supply. So I think they will be critical with regard to their supply chain in the future, and we have to see which flexibility they want to incorporate it in their operation for the future.
Right. I've got a next question from Dave Moore. How can silos be built modularly? How can silos be built modularly?
Well, in our case, we built silos modularly anyway. So
always?
The way I see it modularly, it means either way a silo isn't a standard, so you can vary in dimensions, in sizes of the bins, whether 3 by 1.5 or 2 by 4, all possible. And the other way is, of course, that our silos go to site in a modular way. It is a modular way of build, so it is constructed on site with Lego parts, elements of that together make a silo. So that's our modular way of build, indeed.
I hope that answers Dave's question. Thank you, Dave, for that question. Next question: how do square silos perform? And I think this one is for Dennis. Extreme weather conditions like ice and snow. You say you work a lot with and in Russia.
Yes.
So how do square silos perform in extreme weather conditions like snow and ice?
Yeah, very good. Very good. In my area, the extreme weather conditions is only snow, but it's quite high in certain cases.
You mean high snow?
Yeah, like up to your shoulders. But anyhow, now in front we pass on the expected design loads to TSC, and they nicely incorporate it into their design so that the roof loads get down in a proper way into the fundament of the structure.
Right.
So if I may add to this is what we did, what we talked about at the Lütolf story, the earthquake zones for Russia, the snow loads. Sorry, in Switzerland, yeah. The earthquake loads in Switzerland, the snow loads in Russia are, for example, in a similar manner. We calculated here in-house, all taking into account the applicable regulations.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Okay. Another question from Fred, I believe. How do you deal with the stress points in square silos? How do you deal with the stress point in square silos?
That's a very particular, very specific questions. I think to fully answer that, for now, I would say, as well as we take into account building regulations, there are also, of course, there is also, of course, involved the way product behaves inside of a bin, so to say. And for every product, this is different behavior. There are codes that regulate such behavior that we have to calculate, that we have to take into account. But to be, so in general I can say that, but to be more specific to this one question, I would have to say get in touch, because there are a lot more things.
There's a lot more to it.
A lot more to it, exactly.
Right. Okay. Thanks, Sven. Hannesman Hello there. Two questions here. What is the starting point for planning a system? So let's start with that. What's the starting point for planning a system? When should storage be considered in a project? Dennis, perhaps?
Yeah, actually, in every project, to my opinion, because without storage, there is no operation. Because you need a certain buffer to run operations smoothly and reliable.
And so what's the starting point for planning a system, would you say?
At the beginning.
At the beginning, yeah, okay.
Yes,
okay, sorry.
so at the beginning of every project, you consider your need and your supply chain, how is the raw material delivered. You consider these circumstances, your plot size, for example. What do you want to do in the future?
But now that's different because of COVID.
Exactly, yeah. So you
that
need
changes.
to consider more than one scenario. And that will bring you the flexibility you might need in the future. For example, we have internally, we have one unwritten rule that for each finished product block and dosing block, we try to keep one wall free for future extension. Because, in the past we have seen a lot of customers at the beginning of the project, they were not prepared for the future, for their expectations, and after 2-3 years there was already a need for extension. So if you cannot do it at that time, then you have a huge problem. So even without the request of the customer, we try to incorporate these minor details which makes extension for the future easier.
Are square silos for new installations only, Sven?
Well,
Are
no.
square silos for new installations only?
No. Square silos, you can perfectly integrate them onto an existing facility or even inside an existing plant. We've done both plenty. Yeah.
Yeah, and if I may add,
Well, I was just going to ask you the final question, but you can add to this. Yes.
Yeah, no, but it's important. It even doesn't matter if you have a steel structure or a concrete building. So in both parts, we did it many times in our Russian market. We added later on square silos.
Final question for you, Dennis. Can they be integrated, well, I think you just answered this more or less, into existing structures?
Yes.
So they can...
Yeah, easily.
And how is that done?
You go to site, you view the site, you take the drawings. Of course, structural engineering needs to be involved, detailing. So there is a lot which you need to take care of in front, but together with the customer, you can solve this issue.
Now, before we leave the viewers, I still have this one final overall remaining question, which of course is the one we started this episode with. And the question is, can thinking smart really beat thinking big when it comes to storage? So, final words from Sven.
Well, I think it all starts with thinking smart. It is about planning ahead. It is about making scenarios that you didn't imagine. Don't imagine right now that can happen in 2 years. Who would have thought that there would be border closures within the European Union in this year? Nobody expected that. So it's not about being the biggest, or it is about being smart, but it is about, in the end, I think, adapting to circumstances you might not even be aware of today. I think that's my takeout for my final words, so to say. Yeah.
Thank you, Sven. And thank you, Dennis, of course, as well. And thank you all out there for asking these questions. And if you are still watching and still have questions, of course, don't worry. We'll be online till 12:30. So your questions can still be answered online, of course. So thank you all for watching today and participating with us all. I hope, of course, that you will all join us again next time for the next Feed Forward episode, which looks at conditioning and hygienizing. So stay safe and keep looking forward. Thank you.
And that brings us to the end of this second episode of the Feed Forward webzine. We hope you enjoyed it. The live chat will now stay open until 1 p.m, so please keep posting your questions. In the chat comments, you'll find useful links, including a written digest that further explains some of the smart storage solutions discussed in this episode. And If you want to get in touch with us afterwards, you can do so via email, or you can follow us on social media, where we'll also be posting responses to your comments. In fact, we'd love to hear your feedback on this format in general, what you liked, and any ideas for improvement. In the meantime, we wish you a great summer, and we hope you'll join us for our third episode of Feed Forward in September. And if you missed our first episode, which asked whether it was time for the feed industry to say goodbye to sieve analysis and included a unique new technology called GrainCam, you can find the live stream via the Triot website. Until then, stay safe and keep looking forward.